everybody. Apologies for the slight delay as we were getting started. Was meaning to be on at 2, but got caught doing something else. But we are here. Really excited to be back for the Hot Wall, and indeed, as we begin, a couple of our regular viewers jumping in already. Good to see you, Ballum and Daredevil Balancers. Here we go. Red Cell Paris have been promoted to second tier league. Why didn't they go up last season? They were nervous because Phil was here. Really cool to see them go up, actually. And it would have been cooler had it been last year with the kit. They came close, I think, from memory. But yeah, really good to see. Obviously, I'll always have something of a connection to the club, given the kit and everything else. But yeah, it was really cool to see that, Ballum. And good morning, Daredevil. Coming from South Florida. We are here in West Yorkshire. It's been a bit of a wet week, a bit of a cold week. Well, not cold, it's been warm, but not as hot as the weekend. But good to see you guys. Hope you are well. Hope everyone else is well. And indeed, because we are delayed, I will not spend too much time before we jump to the bubble, but I will just say the regular sort of announcements, bits of updates. The next video, main kind of first corner video, is going to be live very soon. That's just waiting for some approval, but that's going to be really sweet. It's an unboxing video for a special shirt which was sent to me, so that's coming up again, hopefully probably tomorrow, if not beginning of next week, so look out for that. Of course, if you subscribe, you'll get a notification when that goes up. And as a subscriber, you get a bunch of other well, you support the channel first and foremost, but also when I'm going live like now, if you've got your notifications on, you'll get notification of that. So being a subscriber is completely free, but it does have a lot of well, there's a lot of reasons to do it. If you enjoy today's stream, maybe you're watching this on after the fact, you're not watching this live, but please do consider, I should say, subscribing, guys. And also, I've got a Patreon, again, details in the description, but there's some really cool stuff, including a shirt, which I designed. And balances this season in the same league as the other team, Paris FC. Yeah, that is going to be a pretty cool derby there, isn't it? And good stuff. As we jump to the wall, I'll just quickly switch scene. This is our tier list, guys. We have a very simple task today, and that is to add to this list. We're going to add probably about a dozen shirts, maybe more. We'll see how many there are. Hey JVR, good to see you. Yeah, we're going to add a bunch of shirts to this list. There's a very simple format to this, in that my favourite shirts, the hottest shirts of the year, on the right, my least favourite on the left. Most shirts end up somewhere in this kind of middle area. But that is our job for today. Notice only slot, the new man in town, will be many watching the Leeds Southampton promotion. Yes, very interesting for me as well. I'm curious to see. Oh, hang on 1 second. Just need to switch my scene. There we go. Yeah, I'm curious to see who goes up. Even though Southampton are leaving Hummel, because of my work with Hummel, I've definitely built up an affiliation for Southampton. So there's that. Leeds, of course, big rivals to Huddersfield. Not that I'm a big Huddersfield Town fan, but they're my local team, of course. But also, you know, lots of friends who are Leeds fans. So I'm kind of happy either team that goes up. Yeah, hope for a good game. Hey Sega, good afternoon. Yeah, Ballum, yeah, I mean, if it's not, I mean, Huddersfield, a big sporting town, and Leeds are certainly the rivals to that. So guys, we are going to make some shirts, and we're starting with a big one. We are starting with the AC Milan 2024 shirt. Of course, any time either of the Milan clubs release a shirt, there's a lot to talk about, and given that AC Milan are, of course, a striped team, striped shirts are notoriously difficult to innovate year on year. Typically, stripe thickness is a classic way to change things up, but it's quite hard to produce a new stripe kit year on year. However, I think there are things to like about this one. My first impression is Puma have played it somewhat safe, but ultimately the end result, if you look at this front shot here, is good. This is easily one of the most simple collars in the game, a simple crew neck, but it does ultimately look quite effective. I think the contrast in white, something which AC Milan of course have done over the years. They've had kind of fairly significant portions of white often in the collar, but that, just as a base, looks good. Not sure about this pattern in the red stripes. There might be a story there. Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. And apparently this is, I didn't realise it's the club's 125th anniversary. Okay, yes, there's a backnet detail there. So it's safe if unspectacular. Yes, we will get to the Dortmund shirt battle. That should be well, I'm definitely going to have some things to say about that one. We'll come to that surely. Yeah, so in terms of the overall look of this one, again, somewhat playing it safe with the collar. If we were to talk about stripe thickness, this is fine. I don't mind that at all. And I think really the things that let this one down, ultimately I don't think this pattern in the red is doing anything. It feels a little bit distracting. I think I'd rather have a little bit more. If you're going to have a subliminal pattern like that, I think I'd rather it be a bit more intricate, a bit more detailed. The shirt still feels quite flat as a whole. And the top tier shirts, the best shirts and the best brands in the world, the biggest teams in the world, they're doing much more interesting things with the knit construction. You can see this looks like, I don't know if this is Ultra Weave or if this is, I believe this is Ultra Weave, which is Puma's tech. It's fine, but it doesn't have the kind of really exciting texture which some of the best Nike and Adidas shirts often have. So technology is perhaps letting it down. Obviously the plain back as well is a shame. Rivals Inter make a point of having striped backs, but with AC Milan, they don't have that stipulation. Ultimately, it's not good. They've got the token section at the bottom there, but yeah, that is just a shame. Of course, it's for legibility concerns, etc. So I think this one, on account of, despite being very simple, I think quite a smart collar and cuff approach, and I think there are elements which I like. I think this one would be hovering around the kind of candle tier, flames tier border for me. It's probably one of the better Puma AC Milan home shirts, but that kind of speaks more to how mixed Puma AC Milan home shirts have been since Puma took over the contract. I think I would probably have this one again, just like on that border, maybe even exactly on the border. But love to get your thoughts, guys, especially as this is, of course, a very big club. And there may even be some AC Milan fans in the chat, I don't know, but we'll stick them there right here. And indeed, some good comments here. So, Data, do you have any ways to innovate stripes? I think one of the biggest things is to, again, well, I can see a mention for Inter as well. JP mentions the Inter zigzag. I think ultimately Inter, though there have been some misses, they've certainly been much more effective in finding creative ways to innovate in stripes. I think ultimately they've been a lot better than AC Milan in the home kit department specifically. And there are other things you can do, but I think certainly the key thing for me is kind of the stripe thickness and the way that those stripes are utilized whilst maintaining a striped identity. You know, of course, that's one thing which I think was weak about the snakeskin kit that Inter had. It was very creative, but it missed, like, the contrast wasn't there between the stripes. It ended up looking quite just basically too blue. There wasn't enough black in the kit. But I think the key very much is to, well, it's a balance, isn't it? Keeping the striped aesthetic, but you can do things which are much more interesting, like Inter. I think they've been a lot better, to be honest. Though this one is reasonably smart. I mentioned Atalanta. Yeah, that was a big result. Very cool to see, indeed. Unless you're by Leverkusen fan. Sega says, nice enough, ignore the back. Would have thought they'd mark the 125th anniversary a bit more. Yeah, I think you're onto something, Sega, that there will possibly be another shirt. I would imagine they're going to cash in, right? It's a big anniversary. Perhaps, you know, this is all they do to nod to it, but I would think you're going to have more. At the very least, there'll likely be some lifestyle items and possibly more. Let's talk again about the final, and indeed by Leverkusen. I just could see you, mate. Hope you're well. And I did also, I think AC Milan's best kits are collabs. Well, indeed, in fact, we even have. Do we have? Yes, we have. I forget who it was they're collaborating with now, but yeah, I really like that. That's kind of one end of the spectrum. This is kind of in the middle. There are things I like, and I actually think this is a lot better than some of the other Puma kits we're going to talk about today. But that's AC Milan. A somewhat, you know, underwhelming start. I do think this will look, you know, again, looking at the shots there, it looks reasonable. But what about Lille? Now, Lille have been one of New Balance's bigger teams. They've been with New Balance for a little while now, and New Balance and Lille have actually been quite a good partnership. We've seen some really good kits from the combo. I think this one has something about it. Not the biggest fan of the collar. This kind of style, and I don't even know what you'd call this, but this kind of like cut off, tapered look. To me, I'd rather that actually just formed a little V. You see here, like, I'm not the biggest fan of that as a style. Looking at the kind of the sort of chevron look, makes you think of many kind of Bordeaux shirts. I don't know if I can't recall. Well, in fact, let's go to old football shirts. Our reference point for teams' kit history. What have Lille done in the past? We'll just skim through. Yeah, so they've had, like, this was a fantastic kit from Umbro. Okay, so it was a classic. Oh yes, of course, they had the anniversary shirt. So this kind of chevron look is vaguely related to the club. In the subliminal style, it's fine. A little bit basic, a little bit cheap, but I don't mind that as an approach. Backnet detail, you know, is what it is. Nothing too crazy. It's a little bit. I think the idea is strong. It could have been much better executed. For me, improve that collar. Again, I'd go for the V. And I think, like, again, if we're really thinking about the best looks, if that pattern was embossed or part of the fabric, I think that's automatically a big win. The crest application has a little bit of texture there, but ultimately I think it's a little bit, I often say on the channel, half-baked. Ian said it's the mayoral chain look. Yeah, indeed. So I think, again, it's reasonable, but it's really not kind of upper echelon stuff. As a home shirt, I do think they're onto something. Again, with a better collar, maybe matching cuffs, but certainly I think you could do more with this theme. I think honestly that would have every shot of being in the Flames tier. Is there another club that has a pentagon-shaped crest? Asked Daredevil. I'm pretty sure there is. Off the top of my head, I'm struggling to think of any, but I'm sure chat can help us there. And Sega said in the V-neck will consider the giant chevron. Exactly. Literally, I almost want to mock it up in Photoshop. No, I won't. But I just think that would have looked a lot better. And for that, largely for that reason, but for other reasons as well, I think we're looking at a kind of mid to high candle. Oh, I forgot to change Puma's rank. So one thing we're doing this year, of course, which we did last year as well, but we're going to track my feelings for a brand as a whole, a brand's kind of entire catalogue. This is very approximate. Take these positionings with a grain of salt, guys. But Puma, not been the strongest year, and I think in general, Puma are a huge brand, but there's not been many standout kits from them. Time will tell as to whether we see more in the coming weeks and months. Now, my computer's slowing down. I hope I'm still live. I think I am, but do let me know, guys, if as I say, I'm having some issues with my Photoshop rendering. It's probably because I'm streaming simultaneously. I say this a lot, but streaming simultaneously and trying to use Photoshop and on Chrome. Maybe I just need a better computer. But we come to placing Lille on the board. I think honestly this wouldn't need much to really shoot up the ranks. But as is, I'm not really feeling it. So we will stick them once I've resized it. I think there's a gap here which feels reasonable. And that is of course New Balance. So I mean, so far I've actually been quite high in New Balance. You can see by this placement here. If we just move Homer, let's move them, let's do that, something like that. Yeah, so New Balance actually sitting quite pretty there, just behind the likes of Umber and Kappa. Is Watford a pentagon? I think Watford's more of a kind of shield. Well, that's again using okay, so wasn't that the proposed rebrand, I think. But no, I'm checking. I guess it is. No, I guess it is an kind of upside down pentagon, to be fair. With the yeah, I think that would count. Sega. So that's Lille. What about Vélez Sarsfield? Now, Diadora, despite not having many clubs, have been a brand which I've enjoyed their output, and you can even see here, at least based on the brand watch section here, we have them way up here. Now, of course, when a brand only has one or two shirts, they're only, they have every chance with a couple of good designs to shoot up more, whereas the big brands have so many more shirts that it is actually much harder to be higher up the section. But ultimately they're here, and it might just be because they've only got one kit, but that still counts. Will this Vélez Sarsfield shirt add to that? We'll just check if this is going to be worn on pitch. I assume so. Again, we're only ranking shirts on the hot wall that have that are going to be worn on the pitch. We're not ranking keeper kits as well, just to keep things tidy. So looking at Vélez Sarsfield, I do apologise for the speed of this. This looks a bit slow. We've got another chevron, so good to see. Almost like like buses. They come at once. This kind of white-out design, all white design, though not as common as blackout shirts, certainly not that exciting these days. It's not the kind of design which really does too much unless you've got really good details, technology. And this is, I would say, average, below average by the looks of things in terms of the tech. The asymmetric inside cuff colours, sure, that's not bad. I don't mind that. That's an interesting move. This stamp, though we like to see jock tags, a little bit cheap looking. Ultimately, as well, if we zoom, I can't quite see. It looks like it might be script or kind of some details there. I actually think I'd probably rank this below the Lille shirt. There are some similarities again with the broad kind of style. I think Diadora though, I would expect more from them, and I think the quality does look to be lacking. Again, it's very hard. We're judging this on pictures, and often, I do like to critique shirt materials, construction, material technology, etc. It is hard to judge that, and sometimes I can get things wrong judging it on the pictures, but we're not just looking at design, we are looking at the quality and things like that. This one does look a bit subpar, so we won't go much below Lille, but if Lille were there, I think we'll have them just behind. And of course, being a Diodora shirt, and I think I should just check where, if Diodora, I forget exactly which shirt was a Diodora shirt, or maybe it was actually that they had two. I mean, we're going to bring them down, and I don't want to, we'll go like here, but again, this is the problem with the brown watch. I'm then trying to find the Diodora shirts. I think that was the Diodora shirt, right? Oh, that's a different band. Who knows? Who knows? Sega says quite like the inside of the sleeve colours. If you had that on a Italian away shirt, for example, yeah, that would look good. I definitely could see that. And JP says Mario would not be impressed with the number I'm going to keep against the whole wall feel. No, she would not. Absolutely. I doubt there'll be any petitions to to include them, but no, yeah, that would definitely not go down well with the Keepers Union. Goethe Fürth from Germany. I believe, are they in the second tier? Yeah, I think they are. Another Puma shirt. So we talked about Puma, of course, with AC Milan. Though this is a plain back, I must say I don't actually hate, of all the kind of ways to do stripes, this actually, again, a striped back or a hooped back, I don't actually hate that. It works better than the AC Milan shirt does, certainly, because the way it's cut off, it almost looks like a kind of creative decision, or at least, you know, having the kind of bowed hoop there. I actually don't mind that. And again, the gradient, though I'm not the biggest gradient fan, it's nice to see that consistency front and back. I think it's funny, in this example, the crew neck feels a lot worse to me in the AC Milan shirt. I think it was something of a positive. Here, it's less positive for me, and I think that's partly because you've got, obviously this being a solid colour, with the gradient, I'm not sure if a gradient collar would look good. That would be much harder to achieve technically, given, you know, the way collars are made and that sort of thing. But ultimately, the collar jumps out as a negative to me compared to the AC Milan shirt. So first impressions, somewhat mixed. The sponsor certainly as well is an eyesore in the blue. It's not a hard and fast rule that you need to recolour a sponsor. I think sometimes actually there's something to be said about keeping sponsors and, you know, brands in their original colours. But because of the size of this one, the amount of space that's already been vacated for the sponsor on top of the blue, there's a lot there to digest. So I think, again, very different to the AC Milan shirt, but it's a similar kind of feeling for me in terms of placement, probably a little bit lower, but not much though, because I do think, again, though I'm not a big gradient fan, but I do think this one actually, as an approach, has something about it. I don't mind the shades of green here, the two shades, and indeed the way the gradient's been utilised to kind of move between the shades. So it's a very, very interesting one, this one. In fact, if we, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, and I actually think I would put this not far behind the AC Milan shirt. Again, I would actually say, like, as a, you know, initial take, I considered this is a gradient design, and I'm basically a little bit biased against that. Any regular viewers will know that. I find myself, this is going to sound like a very backhanded compliment, but disliking this a lot less than I would expect to. I can't think of another way to put it, but yeah, I mean, there's PSG we looked at last week. I'll stick Goethe Fürth just behind, which is not a bad place at all. And that, of course, is another Puma kit. We'll bump them down ever so slightly. So that is our next ranking. Let's continue, guys. Let's go to Vikingur from Iceland, from Ekjavik. Now, Macron. one of the most prolific brands in the game. And when Macron are on it, they really are on it. This is, well, a couple of things immediately jump out. Now, the map-based design, to me, is somewhat overdone. It's one of those trends which it feels like the moment's passed on it. And I think of all the kind of map styles, this fairly obvious style to me is some of the least interesting ways to approach a map-based kit. I think I prefer them either if they're a bit more subliminal, so a bit more kind of, maybe as an embossed pattern, or only, something that can only be seen from a certain angle with certain lighting, or something more abstract where the idea of a map is approached but through the use of colours, shapes, patterns. It's a bit less literal, and I mean that's just a general thing again with my taste in designs. This couldn't really be more literal, could it, in terms of the map? The BMW central sponsor there is also very curious. The kind of cut out BMW logo, somewhat obscured by the map, but that's a very sort of prominent sponsor position. Yeah, and Daredevil mentioned the crest being high and these details being high. They do feel quite high, I think, especially because of the gap with the sponsors. Yeah, they feel a tad high, and I think that would be an immediate thing. This is a very kind of Kappa style position, isn't it? Kappa kits often have these kind of high crests, high details. Feels like a Kappa kit. Macron also fall into that category, and there's something about the Italians, I think. They seem to like it. These striped cuffs look nice, and the collar is fine. It's actually a reasonable collar. We've seen a lot worse. But looking at that pattern again, I really don't think it's much to write home about. Yeah, there's a nice embroidered detail on the back here. Overall, I must say, it's definitely a missed opportunity. And given the fact that it is essentially, I would say, a trend done badly, we have seen much better map-based kits. Also, sometimes a big thing that does help is kind of a strong colorway. This is a somewhat standard colorway. Yeah, nothing to write home about in that department. So, Macron and Vikinger, I would definitely have this towards the lower end of our third tier, the cannon tier. Many shirts in this section of the tier list actually do have elements which I like, but they're either badly executed, or I think that they're not enough to kind of prop up the overall feelings towards a shirt. So that is Vikinger. Of course, we will rank Macron or move Macron as well, and I've actually been very high on Macron, very high in fact, but we will bump them down slightly. But of all the big brands, they are definitely one of the biggest, if not the best performing, I would say. So you can see here, yeah, just as a quick kind of stock take, and I'd class a big brand as like a top 10 brand, but certainly Macron, Kappa and Umbra I think could all be in a shout for that kind of category. And those actually are the three brands I've enjoyed the most, broadly speaking. Hummel close behind as well. But that's Vikinger. We go back to another Puma shirt. In fact, we've got a lot more Puma shirts. So it's very much the day for Puma between AC Milan. We've got St. Pauli. We've also got Dortmund to come, I believe, today. So lots of Puma shirts. Sega says, oh, it's BMW. I thought it was some sort of Coppa Italia badge. Yeah, it did look like that, didn't it? Yeah, which is quite funny. Now, this is Holstein Kiel from Germany. And the pattern on this one is quite interesting. Almost looks like a kind of well, I don't know what the story is here, but here we go. It's a honeycomb hexagon pattern. I don't mind it. It definitely adds interest to the shirt. Had it been plain, I think it would have been, of course, a bit too simple. So I don't mind that. Curious that there isn't any pattern on the darker blue. And if you look at the back of the shirt, it's unfortunately plain. There's a bit of a script detail, as many German teams of course have their team name at the top, as well as a little backneck detail. So I think this one, again, the pattern, really the kind of feelings of the kit are going to hinge on whether this pattern looks good. And I think broadly speaking, the pattern is interesting, but I'd probably like to see if, it might be too daring, but I think if you just had a little bit more kind of contrast maybe in between the hexagons, that might be too much. Like, I wouldn't expect it to be as dark blue as here, for example, but I'd be curious to see that. Maybe that would just be too much, but maybe even some more kind of colour within this little hexagon swirl. I feel like there's other things that could separate this one or make this one a little bit stronger. So it's good to see. This might maybe even bespoke, I don't know. But if we come to the away shirt as well, which again is on here, I think this one is largely more successful as a kit. And I think the way the pattern fits in this panel feels quite nice. Duncan nodded to the sporty shirts, which we'll come into, I believe, next or just after these two Puma shirts. So looking forward to talking about that indeed. Segis is getting absolute laundry detergent price from both these kits. Yeah, the colourway definitely has a bit of that. And Ian says much prefer the Kiel away shirt. I also prefer it. I would say it's not too far from me. I think both definitely have something about them. I think the away actually would have an outside shot at the flame steer. If not, be in the flame steer. So if we rank the home shirt first, I think this one, again, the aesthetics of the pattern, I don't mind at all. It's curious that it seems to be sort of slightly angled, and again, I don't mind that. I'm sure they experimented with different angles, and maybe I think I'm right in saying, yeah, it does seem to be sort of ever so slightly tilted to one side. I'll be curious to see more versions of this, and I'm sure there would have been a straight version which they tried, because I think that was the natural place to go first, wouldn't you? But maybe not, I don't know. This one has a kind of mid canon tier vibe for me, and I think, again, mentioning the collar which you talked about, it's one of those things where ultimately these sorts of simple crew necks, they don't take away from a shirt too much, but they're definitely definitely one of those kind of slightly unexciting areas of the kit, but I don't mind that, given that we do see so many much busier collars. I think in this example, I'm happy to see sort of less faffy collars, for want of a better phrase. But that is Holstein Kiel. There's a gap there which that can fill. That's their home shirt, of course. Then we come to the away. I think again, just in terms of the pattern and the way it fits into that panel, I do like it. I do like, you've got this kind of wave approach. We see that often, but because the way that this kind of the bottom end of the wave follows in some way the trajectory of this central panel, it gives it a nice kind of, it does fit well, or at least it's been cropped well, if you like. The plain back is a shame. You'd like to see, with patterns like this, it's always nice when you have kind of a little bit of those waves coming over the back. That would have helped a lot. That definitely does hold it back a bit, but I would take this one over the home, much like the love shown in the chat. I do actually think this one does have more to it than the home, and I will rank it a little bit higher in the counter tier. I don't think this is quite Flames tier territory, but definitely a bit of effort for me personally. Looks like tire tracks, says Daredevil. Somewhat of a tire track theme, or a vibe, I should say. Duncan says, sponsor ruins that Kiel away shirt. It's funny because I think with the sponsor here, because red is very much still a colour of the club, I'm a lot less kind of offended by it, if you like, compared to like the Greuther Firth shirt, the sponsor on that one. I think this one is definitely, well, to me it's less offensive, less egregious, but I do hear what you're saying. I do hear what you're saying, Duncan. So let's go here for Holstein Kiel away. Pretty solid effort there. And of the two shirts, of course, we will just move Puma down ever so slightly. Not the best day at the office for the big cat, and it will continue, I will say. But let's just go to St. Pauli. Lots of interest in this one because, of course, St. Pauli have something of a cult following, and they've been promoted to the Bundesliga. So a lot of excitement around the team, and it's great to have them in the Bundesliga. They are one of the most iconic teams, I would say, in world football in terms of the aesthetic around them, and of course the ethos of the club from a football kit perspective. Notably, Hummel and St. Pauli had one of the best partnerships of the 10s, I would say, or certainly the most productive when it comes to football kits. We saw some amazing designs from that partnership. Looking at this design, I've seen mixed reviews from people. Ultimately, I like the idea of going quarters. The execution is a little bit off, I would say. I mean, just looking here, because you've got essentially 3 tones of brown, that's a tricky starting point already. Now, again, we're looking at release pictures, so it's hard to kind of really gauge colours until you see a shirt in person. See here, it looks a lot more, well, it looks a lot better because of the editing. On the retail pictures here, it's one of those where because of the cut of the shirt, you've got these kind of side panels, etc. It's hard to really know exactly what the shirt is going to look like from a colour perspective. But my first impression is I actually think it looks good. It is quite simplistic though, and again, it's you know, St. Pauli aren't one of the biggest teams for Puma by any means, but they are, you know, in the top division now, and of course they have a big following. It feels like Puma are just lagging behind the competition. When you think of the big brands and the technology that is afforded to some of the bigger teams, it's hard to not look at this and think it's a little bit subpar. But moving aside from that, the whole idea of a quarter shirt I think is good. St. Pauli have had that before. I believe it was in the 91 season. But, you know, this one, the quarters aren't enough. You kind of want to see more, again, more details, especially for a team like St. Pauli. They're crying out for some skull and crossbones somewhere. You don't want to do that every year. But, yeah, ultimately, the plain back as well, as nodded to, is a real shame. And I think just these kind of 3 tones of brown, it's a little bit off for me. Particularly this main shade on the back, which you can see on the side panels. Now again, on the edited pictures here, it looks a bit stronger. The colours do look better. So it's one we'll have to wait and see more of. Nicely the long sleeves on the Jetson Irvine there. But again, I like brown shirts, so the floor typically for a St. Pauli shirt is going to be a bit higher for me, but this definitely isn't reaching anything close to the ceiling, I would say. Duncan says, I'm a Wickham fan, so I have an affection for cord shirts. I think it's a decent shirt. I also think it has good elements, but it's definitely missing some of the finesse. And Ian said it's about position themselves as anti-capitalist and made themselves one of the most successful capitalist brands. It's yeah, that's an interesting discussion, it's fair to say. Probably one that might need more than this stream to discuss, but yeah, I think again, I'm excited to see St. Pauli in the Bundesliga because I do think brown kits, there's something of a, maybe it's the novelty factor, but I think they're a welcome addition to the top leagues. Rarely seen, of course, but often appreciated, at least by me personally. Ultimately, I think we can say as well now, St. Pauli have officially moved on from their DIY kits, their own brand kits. That was largely an unsuccessful venture, which was a real shame, but there were a couple of reasonable designs in there, but I don't think going own brand, at least from a design perspective, was a positive. So I'm going to put them as high as here. I am actually quite high on the shirt, I think, compared to consensus, but maybe I'm wrong on that. And I would actually, you know what, I'm actually going to go even higher. I would put it alongside the AC Milan shirt. So we're going to go on the border here. Why not? I'm actually maybe honestly the fact it's brown probably does help. As silly as that might sound, and that is definitely a novelty factor. But I do think the colorway is good, even though the choice of browns on the kit could have been better. So says, as a commentary fan, as a colleague as well, I can't get behind brown kits. Yeah, I don't. I think you're probably in the majority. Sega. I'm kind of, I have a bit of a soft spot for them, but I can understand that absolutely. A couple of Nike kits. We come firstly to Sporting Club de Portugal, and this has actually been touted as the home kit. Now I haven't seen confirmation of this, but it's without a doubt one of the more surprising choices, given that it is this kind of hoop design from Nike, as opposed to what you typically think of as the sporting, the kind of base sporting home shirt. And if we just again pull up our football shirts reference, again you typically think of often hoops, or usually almost always hoops, the kind of Celtic style. Black, of course, has been a big colour and is usually the away kit colour. So it is a very daring home shirt. It reminds me of when Norwich, many of you will remember, I forget which year it was now, it was the where was the kit? I'm sure it's just missing here. There was the really crazy hooped kit. Now I can't remember if that was a third kit or a home shirt. I think it's missing from here, right? Yeah, anyway, it was in the 10s. A kind of a very daring hoop design. It reminds you of that. Again, it's not on here, but that's okay. Looking at this design, I think hoops generally are an approach which I quite like. This one is definitely a good idea, which they've failed to fully embrace. And I think in this example, I'd probably like to see, for example, the hoops continue on the sleeves, obviously on the back, but you know, that's a kind of classic conversation. And if you look at the hoops themselves or the execution of the hooped idea, it's fine, but you know, I don't think, despite it being quite different as a home shirt, I do think this, you know, definitely jumps out. I think we've seen better approaches to hooped kits. Ultimately, I think just again, whether not even just necessarily on the sleeves, but I think I'd want to see a bit more in the way of those three colours. You know, maybe even in this top section here for the template, to have a bit of that in green and or white. I think again you could do more things with the cuffs as well to kind of really embrace that kind of triple green, black, white colorway. But it feels quite fresh. I think, you know, in terms of the design, again, surprising for a sporting home shirt. It feels more like an away or third kit. The overall approach is good. The plain black shorts and socks, you know, nothing to say about that. And I think that's a fair comment. So, well, indeed, a couple of fair comments. So Duncan said, "Kit reminds me of Nike's last for Venezia." Yeah, I think that one, if we, again, I'm not sure if it will be on here. Yeah, again, I think that one, it's a small thing, but that just looks better going on the sleeves. That's not the only thing I'd change about the kit, but I do think that probably would help, and I think that actually does just look better. So that's one thing I would say. And then Ian said the three colour hoop shirt seems to be a rugby thing. Yeah, definitely more of a rugby thing. It definitely evokes those kind of rugby kits, and I think that can be quite a strong aesthetic. there's been so many good kits in both football and rugby which have done that kind of approach quite well. I'll come back to the comments on commentary, but yeah, I think when all is said and done, this one, despite being one of the more unusual sporting home shirts, certainly Nike have been quite safe, beyond safe even, a bit too conservative with their sporting kits. This one stands out, but I don't think it has enough to go in the higher tiers. So as we look here, we don't want to go upside down. That's not a good start. We'll resize them, we'll get them on the board. I think this is a mid to high candle. We're talking like this sort of area. Maybe if we just go further down, this section of the tier, this is looking a bit plain, isn't it? So let's get them there on the board. That is Nike. So that's fine, Nike there. And that is the sporting home shirt. So curious to see, with that being the home shirt, what the away and third shirts will look like. You can expect the away may not be black as a base, which is their typical colour. So that's one to watch. Talking on the commentary shirt, takes especially the Admiral Classic, that the colours are mostly white with some brown I could go for, but full on brown was too much. Again, understandable. Ragab says really underwhelmed with the United shirts. Umbro did spoil you, Ross, and that was incredible. Umbro and United were just a perfect partnership in many ways. Duncan says it's a great shirt, probably not a great sporty shirt. Yeah, I definitely think you're on something there, Duncan. I would concur with that. Now, we're not going to talk about the City goalkeeper shirt. I actually think there's something about this which I quite like, even though I know I shouldn't. But we're not going to be ranking goalkeeper kits, as we said at the start. So we'll come to the that's a word I cannot say. W's and R's are hard. Just because. For me, they are anyway. Urawa Red Diamonds. We'll call them the Red Diamonds for short. Their third kit. Now, of course, we're at this point of the Nike template where now any clubs that have this again for 2024, it feels like it's a year too late. Given that the top level Nike teams, of course, are moving away from this look, which has dominated the past couple of years. For the swoosh, the Red Diamonds kits, like a few of the other J League kits or shirts in this template with collarbone sponsors, simply do not look good. It pushes it far too far down the shirt. The pass in this one is fine, but I do think again it's hard to kind of look at that and not feel like the balance is off. It's just not a good template when it comes to incorporating those collarbone sponsors. Now there is the pass on the back, which is nice, and it gives the shirt, this might just be the pictures here, but a very kind of luxurious feel. And that is, I think ultimately a good thing to see that it's not plain. And the Mitsubishi sponsor there even actually does tie in with the kit aesthetic, given that it's red. So I think this is a victim of the template more than anything else, which is a thing we've said for many a Nike shirt over recent years. Yes, I think because this is a 2024 kit, I forget exactly when the J League season runs, but for those nations or leagues where the season is kind of starting and ending in this calendar year, we'll still see this. And of course for lower tier teams, so like think of like clubs in the Football League, you may be seeing this template still. I say Football League, I mean non-league, or well, to be fair, even some Football League clubs as well actually. So this template is not going to just disappear, sadly, because I think it has largely been a negative era, broadly speaking, for Nike. So I would say a few kind of fundamental errors on this one which hold it back. even though the pattern I do think has something about it in terms of an aesthetic. We'll stick it here. I think that feels about right. J-League starts in February, I think. Yeah, okay, thank you, Jess. So that would exactly line up with the thinking there that the whole season would have essentially run, or should run, through contained within this calendar year. So that is the Red Diamonds third kit. On the City kit, it says the City Keeper shirt would work well as the St. Pauli shirt. Honestly, I think it would. I actually do think it would. Even though it's a lot to take in, but I personally don't mind the look as a whole. We've actually had a new shirt added to the list, so let's jump back. What have we got? Off the press, the Jamaica away shirt. Now, this is going to come out of the blue because I thought they'd only just changed it. Maybe it has been 2 years ago. I can't remember. But let's take a look at the Jamaica away shirt. Now we've got, in terms of the pattern, it's definitely quite a vibrant pattern. And Jamaica, of course, with Adidas have been doing quite a few interesting things. So I think, as this takes a while to load, if we look at the kind of aesthetics of the pattern, it's definitely quite a strong initial impression in terms of the, I think the style of this, having it quite detailed, but largely just 2 colours. I don't mind that at all. I think, if we're going to be really kind of saying what makes a pattern, what separates, another crazy pattern like this one from the rest of the pack, I think we're often looking to things like, again, technology. We're looking to things like what are the details alongside it. Ultimately, I think because they've already gone down this kind of path of quite a kind of bold pattern, I think they could have added a third colour. I mean, I guess you got the base of the shirt, right? But I think, though it maybe would be too much. Yes, thank you, Deadeye. You can see the bird in the pattern. That makes sense. So that's part of the inspiration. I actually think a third colour, maybe it is actually white, just to bring out some of those details. Like I think, actually Duncan, I'd agree. It does have a pre-match top vibe to it. Let me see if I can find an example. I mean, if we go to like Nigeria, for example, and again, hopefully they've got. They've not got. So hang on, where's the? Maybe I'm not thinking of Nigeria. I forget exactly which shirt it was that I'm thinking of. But anyway, we won't be too distracted. So I think we could have thought, though it would be very busy and even busier, I think we could have afforded a third on the back, but I don't know. So I would say, casting a critical eye on the kit, we have seen better shirts in this genre. That's not to say that this won't. I would expect this to be popular. I would expect this to have a lot of fans. It's the kind of approach, the kind of style which does resonate with collectors, and especially those who want to create the kind of bolder, more standout shirts. This, of course, is that. But I think we've seen better ones in this style. I will put this fairly high in the counter tier, approaching the Flames tier. Because I do think, though it's not excites me too much, it is actually is a tried and tested approach, and the kind of shirt, this sort of style of shirt has dominated in many ways the general shirt scene over recent years. But I think it could actually be much better. That's my thoughts. So he says, would the J-League season have any effect on the Japan shirt reveal? Because we've seen all the new Adidas national shirts except them. Yeah, they often are quite late, aren't they, Japan? I'm hoping we see that soon, because that is certainly one of the kits of any release season which I look forward to seeing. I don't even recall seeing any leaks, but maybe I'm wrong on that. But there we go. That is the Jamaica shirt. We've got more, guys. We've got more. We'll keep going for a little bit longer. Now, we're also not reviewing pre-match shirts as well as keeper kits. But indeed, you know, it's worth kind of checking out any of the MLS pretty much shirts. As you know, as collections, they're often quite interesting. And that does seem to be an interesting design there. But we'll move on to Alkmaar, AZ Alkmaar. Another Nike shirt here, and this is their 24 home shirt. So let's have a look. What have we got? What have we got? Apologies. Now, this seems to be a kind of, well, I'm assuming this is the local cathedral. And I really like this as an idea. We've seen some great shirts that have been inspired by cathedrals, thinking like the Coventry collection. We talked about Coventry with Hummel. That was a really strong collection. This one, honestly, I love the idea. I wish we didn't have this gradient. This feels like a very cheap execution, a very kind of quick, let's get it onto the kit. But honestly, either I would have just a solid central column there, and not have the gradient, or I just keep the whole of the pattern and maybe just dial down the opacity slightly. To me, this kind of use of a gradient, again, I'm going to use the word cheap. I just don't think it actually looks that good. When you've got such a detailed, intricate pattern, which is a real strength, and I think again that could be utilized so nicely. I think the actual aesthetics of the stained glass window, that's fine, that's well done. I think the gradient detracts from that. Personally, I do think the overall look of the shirt is reasonable, and indeed this Nike template is actually one of the better ones compared to like the Red Diamonds template. I do think this one is largely positive to that. Manchester United 2012 versus Duncan. Yeah, we'll look out of place for United. So, really like the idea. I don't think the execution is great. I would probably still put this in the kind of higher canal tier though, because I do think, despite my reservations, there are actually the overall look of the kit is actually above average, I would say. But it's really not, like, for me, when I look at this, I wish they're just not. It's not just the gradient, but to me that is definitely a negative, unfortunately. So Alkmaar, I think we can go somewhere like here for them, and be another Nike shirt. Not the best day for Nike on the whole. Of course, they are going to have so many teams though that they're positioning in this brand watch section could very much shift. But that is the Alkmaar home shirt, and we stay in Holland to go to and I forget how to pronounce Nijmegen. I forget. I know some. Well, a bunch of you guys do pull me up, rightly so, on my pronunciation, and I forget exactly how to say. We'll call them NEC. Any Dutch speakers can help me in the chat. Why the mini duplicate sponsor above the crest? It's an interesting question. Sega, I think. Yeah, curious to see that, or to understand that. But coming to the Nijmegen shirt. Now their club colours there are quite distinctive. The red, green and black, and though it's not my favourite kind of combination, having this pale blue with those colours, it's a bit of a clash. Nijmegen. Okay, thank you, Andreas. Nice. I knew I could count on you. Nijmegen. That was close. One of my better attempts there. Thank you, mate. Yeah, so as a colourway, like with the club colours, it's not really my favourite combination. Now the pattern in the body is fine. It's got a fairly kind of industrial look to it. It's some kind of scaffolding or whatever, and I'm not sure. I'm guessing that is I'm not sure what the story is exactly. Apparently it's a reference to when the side did well in the UEFA Cup in the noughties. Yeah, so like I'm left somewhat whelmed by the kit on first impression, but I must say Roby as a brand continue to impress me. I think they punch above their weight when it comes to, you know, things like thankfully we've got the pass on the back, which a lot of brands don't do, a lot of bigger brands don't do. And though quite simple, the application at least has its, you know, slightly raised, has some texture. Again, that is a positive. So, you know, this isn't like the top tier or anything in terms of materials. Of course, if that was embossed, like the pattern, I say this all the time, but these are the things in which, for example, you know, we wax lyrical about the Reebok Botafogo shirt because that had some really good, chunky, tactile elements. And I think when you look at the Nijmegen shirt here, it's not got that, but it does have good design decisions. And I don't even mind the kind of cutout section here. The brand logo looks quite big. You can also see, we discussed this on a recent episode, the Clover logo, which is one of Roby's kind of, or the brand mark for Roby alongside their logo. So an interesting chat, and I think I'm still largely quite high on Roby, even though this, I think for me ultimately the colourway isn't really my jam. I don't mind seeing the light blue with the club colours. I think, you know, it certainly gives it a bit of an identity. I don't think it's a really it's a particularly attractive kit, and the pattern, though well executed and it does go on the back, again isn't really one which I think excites me too much. But like, this is unlike a lot of shirts we talked about today which had good ideas but they weren't executed well. I think this has been executed quite well. I just think it's ultimately not the most not the strongest base to be working from, if any of that makes sense. I'm not sure if it does. But that's Nijmegen, and that was was that their way? I think it was. Yes, it was their way. So there we go. And Roby again performing well on the. Let's just move Homer down there. Yeah, Roby performing quite well in terms of the well, Phoenix was a band, and I think they're you know, they largely operate out of the Netherlands, but I'd like to see them continue to expand. I think they definitely have the chops to do some more. And we are sticking in Holland, so a bit of a Dutch theme today as we go to FC Twente. From again from the Netherlands with Castor. Now, Castor, of course, well, losing two of their biggest clubs to Adidas in the UK, but they're not going anywhere. They've certainly had a notable year with the likes of Bayer Leverkusen, and indeed, I believe they are still working with Feyenoord in the Netherlands, unless that contract's ended, I don't know. Looking at this particular shirt for FC Twente, it definitely has some elements I like. I think this kind of broad look, though the body is completely plain. I don't mind the kind of construction here, the panelling of the shirt, that's not too bad. The kind of tonal red, the two-tone red, again it's not exciting at all, but I think that's a reasonable way just to give the shirt a bit of shape. And I just says most basic dress of the year. It's certainly basic. It is basic. And I think, you know, I like the cuffs, and this kind of colourway is interesting. But ultimately it is, you know, it feels like, well, is this the first year? Now, this feels like the kind of first year of a new deal. I think Castor are already with FC Twente, aren't they? Is it Twente? I don't know. Okay, they were actually with Maiba up until recently. So, again, unless I'm missing a year, maybe they were already with Castor. This feels like when a brand moves into a team, often the first year, the first kit of a new deal, that first season, those shirts tend to be on the simpler side. So that's definitely the vibe I get. Maybe this is year 2, I don't know. Yeah, another duplicated sponsor. Twente. Thank you, Andreas. Can always trust you to help with the Dutch pronunciation. Yeah, so it's yeah, I don't know in terms of the duplicate sponsor they're saying it. It's definitely one of those things where it's hard to kind of understand given that you've already got the main one. Aesthetically, the sponsor's fine. It's not, doesn't take away too much, but it definitely is quite a lot to take in. So FC Twente, I think I would probably give this one a kind of mid-high candle, because despite the simplicity, ultimately as a home shirt, I don't think Castore have done too badly. Hardly a rave review, but we've seen much worse, and I think, you know, in terms of, again, some of those decisions, I think the construction is fine, the panelling I actually don't mind too much, but I think, yeah, slap bang in the middle feels about right. And as a brand, they're kind of certainly a watch, I would say, in terms of the you know, it reminds me quite a lot of New Balance, when New Balance had that period when they were working with Liverpool, Celtic, you know, this is kind of 2017-18, that kind of era, and then they suddenly lost a lot of those contracts, their biggest contracts, and they're still recovering in some ways from that. And Castore have snapped up so many teams, but they're losing a couple of their biggest ones, and it'll be curious to see if or how they respond to that. These are things, these are conversations. I mean, again, they've been working with Athletic Club, you know, who recently won a trophy. The funny thing is, a lot of their designs actually have been pretty reasonable, even though this looks very much like a knockoff Nike tribute here in that panel, to say the least. But I think it's largely been the quality has been lost given the sheer quantity of teams, I would say. They often are quite basic and safe, Duncan. I think, you know, there's been examples of, I think last year I did like, for example, their collection of Leverkusen had some strong elements. I didn't mind some of the Athletic Club kits that they did. But yeah, there's definitely more misses than hits. And because they work with so many teams, you have to kind of shine the spotlight on them somewhat. Yeah, Andreas, that's cool, man. Maybe they're for good. I missed. You definitely told me that before, but that is pretty exciting. Might as well learn to pronounce the teams, indeed. So this is the Athletic Club away shirt for next year. The collar is interesting. I think this kind of little dotted element here, like as a collar, as a style, that's good. It's a good collar. You know, in an age where and even today we've seen some really kind of either just very simple crew necks, but that is a step up, albeit a small step up. And I might be wrong, but based on the pictures we've got, I would say that pattern looks like it's either a jacquard or part of the fabric. That might just be the lighting. If we take a look here, yeah, that looks like it is a jacquard, like part of the fabric itself, and that is immediately a positive. That is a step up from a sublimation, a step up from a kind of simple transfer. That backnet detail with the Bass flag, bit cheesy, but I don't mind that at all. So even though, again, like it's a shame, because I do think like the front of the shirt, that actually probably is like a low flames tier, because even though the pattern is a bit kind of random, I do like that it is a jacquard. It's a small thing, but that is definitely a step up. These are the kind of things which many of the shirts would need to crack into these top two tiers. Of course, most of these don't have embossed or jacquard patterns, but it definitely helps a lot. But the back there, of course, though the pattern is here, which is a positive, it's hard to just not look at that and think it looks like a budget Nike tribute from the most recent Nike templates. So Castore, they had every opportunity to smash out of the park. would be curious to see this with matching calves. You don't need that, but I think because I'm intrigued by this kind of dotted collar style, there's definitely something that could have been done there. I would say so. We'll stick them on the board anyway. Just missing out, I think, on the Flames tier. This is the thing with Castora. I do think this is actually a reasonable shirt. I think there's actually things I quite like about it, but I don't think it ultimately gets into at least into my personal top 2 tiers, despite some of the positives. So we'll stick them on the board. Yeah, I think it deserves a kind of spot here. Yeah, JPR still sent their spies to Nike, came out with that back panel detail. It's hard to it seems to happen with Nike shirts more than anyone else, maybe because they're just so big. But when you see that, I mean, the thing is, even if it wasn't a copy, I don't think that's a strong element, and it feels at odds with the front of the shirt, which has a slightly classier vibe. Yeah, so that's Castor and the Athletic Club away. But what about the Dortmund home shirt? Now, of course, Borussia Dortmund, set to play in the Champions League final. When is that, actually? I need to find out when that date is. Champions. I can't even spell. 1st of June. 1st of June. So, I need to make a mental note of that. So, very soon. At Wembley against Real Madrid. Now, they almost certainly won't be wearing the shirt, and that is a good thing, because I do think this is ultimately, yet another Puma Dortmund kit, which simply doesn't rise to the occasion. Now, the huge amount of space that's afforded for this sponsor, for the one-on-one sponsor, is nothing short of baffling. You've already got a clear box, and this is a classic conversation. You could kind of wrap up many of Dortmund's recent shirts into this conversation since they changed sponsor, but it doesn't need to break up all the pinstripes here. Ultimately, it just looks bad having that empty space there. At the very least, these outer stripes could continue. If you did that, that's already better, but it looks bad. The thing is, this Puma template doesn't really lend itself that well. The construction of these Puma shirts, because you've got, again, the bottom panel, the bottom of that front panel, that central panel, does kind of taper inwards, but again, it cuts off those pinstripes. So the kind of key design element of the shirt is just being fought against by the template. Their kind of collar is fine. It's not my favourite. I think this is the same as the City owned shirt, which you talked about a bit last week. Duncan said, I think Puma ran out of ideas for Dortmund. Yeah, I just think this isn't a very good. I think this is a great shirt. I think if you're going to have this style, I'll be intrigued. Maybe you take this kind of pinstripe look and apply that to the kind of side section. I think that would be interesting. Maybe not necessarily better, but it's definitely, I just don't think it looks good at all. And then it's got the playback on top of it all, as if that wasn't bad enough. So I'm quite low in the shirt, and it's a shame. I think ultimately, again, this is one of Puma's biggest teams. I'm struggling to. I can't think of a good reason why you need that much space in the middle there for the sponsor. It looks like they've basically done the design without confirmation of the sponsor. Even though they knew it was going to be one-on-one. Definitely subpar for me. I'm not going to punish it too hard. I don't think we're talking about anything in the Ice Cube tier by any means. I forgot to move Castor as well, actually. Where are they? Where are Castor? We'll just bump up a little bit. But stick them on the board. I think this is one of the worst shirts we've seen today, which is a real shame because, again, when we think about Puma, this is absolutely one of the biggest teams. I don't think they've been good for Dortmund. Yeah, the Cup shirts have had something about them. They've done some great anniversary shirts. Yeah, JPS would be great if they played in the 50-year stadium shirt. I believe I assume they'll be playing in their European shirt, which they've been wearing, their Cup shirt, which I think, is certainly better than the home shirt. And indeed, it's funny, the home shirts have just been, I think, largely quite bad. So I'm not a fan of this one at all. I'd honestly stick it as low as here. Yeah, definitely underwhelmed. And I think when we look at Puma, yeah, they've largely been, I would say, largely quite bad. Or at least the shirts that we've ranked, I've not been a big fan. Now, who have we got? We've got Bologna, Institute Munich, Fiorentina. Who else do we have here? Let's just get a few more on the... Let's open up a few more tabs just so my computer can run even more slowly. But guys, hope you enjoyed today's stream. Do let me know in the chat what your favourite shirts today have been. Any comments, any questions. It doesn't have to be about the kits we're looking at. I'd always appreciate getting your guys' perspective. Do let me know. We did rank City, didn't we? I think. I just need to check now. Yes, of course, they're just there. Yeah, so we've got a few more today, so that's good. We are on time to catch up. There is actually still a backlog. I'll get through that in due course. Let's go to Bologna. Now, in terms of like iconic looks in Italy, there are so many good Italian team kits, and Bologna absolutely fit into that category. Their colours are perhaps less distinctive than some other big Italian teams. They've had some really good kits. They have a strong heritage, and Macron have largely been very good with them. Stripes on the back, immediate yes. I actually don't think the yellow adds much there, which you can see on this panel, and that's a fairly naff looking detail, but it's something. Macron love this thing where they like these kind of really big kind of back neck panels. They often don't look very good, but at least they put a detail in there. So I don't think that bright yellow actually is a good thing. That's definitely a negative for me personally, which is a shame because the rest of the kit I think is quite strong. Technology is somewhat average, but material is somewhat average, but I think the overall look of this is reasonable. Interesting when you have a shirt like this as well, when the collar and cuffs don't match, and when the cuffs actually become more the feature. Often it's the collar, which is kind of where you see extra lines, extra colours, extra details. Here's the cuffs actually, which do a bit more lifting, albeit it is literally just a stripe in the red, but here's something. But I'm largely positive about this one, even if it's failing to kind of reach the upper echelons. Like, just taking that in, I think that looks really good. That probably would be a Flame Stick shirt, to be honest. The placement of the Macron logo, obviously it has to be down the centre there, or down the edge, I should say. But at least they have done that. So I think just take away the yellow and add a little bit more in terms of an embossed detail or pattern. It'll be good. Ultimately, yeah, Duncan said it feels like a shirt I've seen 100 times before. Again, how can we innovate stripes as Daredevil? Yeah, I think this is definitely, it falls into that category of it's not one to write home about. And if we just bring up Bologna as well, again, this kind of style, the kind of chunky stripes, 4 stripes, like this, I think is quite funny. The cuffs are so similar here; it almost looks identical. So I think in that case, you could kind of say it could have definitely separated itself from the shirt from 2 years ago. And this kind of pattern in the body, it's a bit cheesy. I actually think I'd rather just have this sort of style. As much as I bang on about subliminal patterns, I don't think this quite works well. Maybe if you didn't have the kind of the framing of the stripes. But anyway, we're not looking at that shirt. Yeah, so it's definitely not winning any awards for innovation, and I would say it's not going to crack into the top tiers. but I would probably still put this one mid to high counter tier, which is a respectable position. But we've definitely seen better, I think, in terms of both Macron and the club and Bologna. Tricky. It is tricky to innovate stripes year on year. Seeing those cuffs, it is hard to argue that, again, seeing how similar they are to the one from 2 years ago. Definitely not the best look for either party. We'll go here for Bologna, and that is, of course, a Macron shirt. So Macron having a good year by my standards, but we will move them down ever so slightly. There we go. I'm going to stay in Italy though, because we're going to go to Fiorentina. I think this shirt is sneakily one of the best ones we've seen this season. Now, we talked about early on the importance of shirt materials and shirt technology, and this is an example of how a seemingly plain shirt can actually be one of the better designs in the game. And it comes down to Kappa's use of technology. So the material itself appears to have, I can't see exactly, but it appears to have a pattern within the fabric. So it's created, sometimes this is like an embossed pattern, sometimes it's like a jacquard. This looks like the former, it looks like some sort of embossing. I'd have to see this in person to confirm. But no matter how it's created, it's the kind of pattern which adds texture, it adds quality, and you know, when you're spending upwards of 70-80 quid for a shirt, you want it to have something about it which doesn't just feel like a regular shirt, a regular t-shirt, or sport shirt, I should say. But that's only the start of it. If we look at the collar, this is one of the smartest collars we've seen, and this kind of style, this kind of loose. You know, you've got the flappy collar, but the way that it comes in at the centre there, that is one of the best collars I've seen in a long time. And it looks, based on these renders, these pictures, it looks fantastic. We then can look at the cuffs, and it's great to see that kind of stretchable section. But again, from a technology perspective, kind of actually having actual cuffs is a good thing. Backnet detail, don't mind that at all. Simple, but it is there, and it's definitely positive. And this is pretty much, guys, the textbook home shirt. I've got very few things to say. I think, you know, the crest, the rebrand certainly isn't that exciting. It's a little bit basic, but nice. Again, judging the quality of the crest, nice to see a bit of chunky texture, chunky plastic. Also worth noting that we mentioned about the kind of stretchy knit on the cuffs. Well, it's there on the collar as well. Honestly, the only thing I think I'd really want to change is that backnet detail. That to me is a bit too basic. I'd rather have like the fleur-de-lis or something else that isn't just the team name over the back in a very boring font. But I have to say, this is for me an easy inclusion in the Volcano tier. I do think this one deserves a lot of love, and it's rare, guys, that we see a home shirt get into this tier. Typically, you know, often it's the away shirts which stand out more, but there's been a few. We had Botafogo recently, which again was an amazing shirt from Reebok. A home shirt from Reebok. Elsewhere, we also had the likes. Well, I quite like the Norway shirt for what it's worth. We also have Palmeiras as well with Puma. But I'm happy to say that I think this Fiorentina shirt is pretty much like, there's very few notes. Yeah, it's going to get there. It's going to get to the top tier. And this is great to see from Kappa and from Fiorentina, who, of course, one of the most storied clubs in world football when it comes to shirts. And I do think their latest effort here is worthy of a place right at the very top. Right at the very top. Of course, being a Kappa shirt as well. We'll move Kappa up accordingly. I'm just really, really happy to see, again, like this approach to a home shirt. Some love in the chat. Daredevil saying just class. That's the Yorkshire me. Class. Sometimes I feel, sorry. That's the longest time to yawn I've had in a while. We managed an hour and 40 without yawning. That was good. And now I'm gonna fall asleep. Just class, says Daredevil. Dunga says Fiorentina always come with bangers. They often do. Just looks classy, says Andreas. That's all that needs to be said. Balance says, Phil doesn't like the BBB shirt. I do not. Indeed. I can't lie. And yeah, the European Conference League final for Fiorentina. Ian says it seems that the sponsor is part of and integral to the Fiorentina shirt. I think certainly, yeah, obviously they've had some big sponsors in the past as well, but I think when you've got a plain shirt like this as well, the sponsor, there's even more kind of onus on the sponsor to not mess it up. This one doesn't add anything, but it doesn't get in the way at least. Right, let's do a quick fire for the last few we've got. Munich, Heidenheim, El Paso Locomotive. Should we start with the two German teams? We'll go to 86 Munich. Now, looking at this, I believe this is one of Nike's stock patterns. I must say, despite being a template or a catalogue pattern, I'm appreciating that it is relatively subliminal. I think that's a good decision rather than having it contrasting. And a lot of the times when Nike have used this pattern on shirts or pre-match shirts, it's been in a contrasting style. I do actually think, pardon me, that this is the right way to approach this pattern. And because it is subliminal enough, it doesn't detract too much. Otherwise, it's a largely average shirt. I would say, again, thankfully, despite having kind of very basic elements, I think they've actually utilised that pattern well. I would put it in the middle of the counter tier, and that's of course Nike. So we will bump them slightly down there. That's Munich. And then if we come to Heidenheim, so appropriate that we have another Puma shirt. There's been a lot of Puma shirts today. And if anyone is tuning in late, do rewind. You can catch up my thoughts, particularly on AC Milan and Dortmund. They're two of the bigger names. Although if you want to see a shirt that I really liked, Fiorentina again, a rare entry into the Volcano City. But coming to Heidenheim, I like the backnet detail there. I'm assuming that's either a city crest or some other connection to the city's past. But I like that. Small thing, even though it's relatively low quality. You know, when we look at this kind of pixel style, I like it more than I do a gradient, and at least it's a very small thing, but at least though the sponsor is still breaking it up, there's just about a few pixels there to kind of keep the stripes going on the outer side. Not my favourite style though, and also this is no kind of fault of the club necessarily, but the colours are somewhat unexciting, having the red and blue. That isn't a problem in and of itself. In some ways, you know, when we think of like Bayern Munich, for example, with a lot of their shirts, I kind of miss the days now where we used to have red and blue. But that's a conversation for another day. So Heidenheim, I would definitely have this one in the kind of mid to low counter tier. I would probably put it below the Holstein Kiel shirt there, the home shirt. Not much further below, but if we go here, I think that sounds good to me. And it's been, I mean, largely Puma have been sliding down the board today. So definitely not their best day at the office. We finish with my guys Hummel and El Paso Locomotive. Now, I talked about not enjoying gradient kits. I mean, it's fair to say this is a gradient kit and some. Yeah, from the socks to the top of the shirt, a kind of full sunset, sunrise design. Now, in this case, it makes a ton of sense that they've got a gradient, and I would say it's executed quite well. The colours here, of course, it really does hinge on the fact that, though quite cheesy, having the orange, based on these pictures, it seamlessly blends into the pattern. So in that sense, if you're going to do a gradient, do it like this, where it is part of the entire kit. And the colours here, again, this kind of strong sunburst colours, sunrise, sunset. Like as a third kit, I forget these guys. I think I might have said it's like a navy and a yellow. I forget their club colours, but this is, you know, a standout shirt. It really does need the shorts and the socks to be fully appreciated. But actually, I do think this is done quite well. So there we go. All gradient kits aren't created equally. I do think this is actually quite a good one. I'd almost want to put this in the Flames tier. Maybe it's because it is the colour of Flames, but I think we'll stick it in the high end of the Callan tier. But it is good to see that a gradient, like, this makes sense, right? To have that design style. And I do think the kind of pattern emanating from the crest as well, not bad at all, not bad at all. There's plenty of space down here, and I think we could afford to stick El Paso there. And guys, that is our final show of the day. So, bit of a recap. Lots of Puma shirts we talked about. Talking like Yoda here. We talked about lots of Puma shirts, notably, again, as I mentioned, the AC Milan shirt, the Dortmund shirt. But the star of the day was Fiorentina, and quite simply their home shirt. I think is one of the best home shirts this year. Fantastic piece of work from Kappa and the Italians. So it wasn't a vintage day. We've had better days at the Hot Wall, but again, we're now at the end, the part of the season, guys, where new releases are ramping up. We're seeing a lot of new kits, and of course, for any teams who haven't released home shirts, June, July is definitely the kind of peak period, and then after that, away shirts and certainly third shirts are more kind of August, September. So lots of shirts to come. I'm going to try my best to stream every Thursday. We've missed a few Tuesdays, and I do apologise. Like this week we missed, and I forgot to put out a message because I was editing the video that's going up. But no, we need to keep up, and there's actually still some shirts to catch up on as well. So there's a lot of new kits coming. Duncan mentioned Sporting. Yeah, I forgot to mention Sporting. That was definitely one of the most interesting designs, a surprising design for Sporting, given that they don't typically have home shirts like that. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and great to have, again, I say this pretty much every Thursday, but I'm really enjoying the kind of flow we have for these Hot Wall shows. We're not the biggest stream at all. On a good day, we're getting 10 people, just over 10 people, but I really enjoy hanging out with you guys. To me, this is something I look forward to every week, because it is just a chance to catch up, like see shirts which I otherwise haven't seen on social media, and get to kind of, almost as I'm ranking shirts, I'm building up my personal kind of wish list, like, thinking, I'd like to buy that, I'd like to get that. There's something quite fun about that. Also, just again, hanging out, getting your guys' input is much appreciated. So thank you. I hope you've had a good time. If you did enjoy today's stream, please be sure to leave a like. You can also leave a comment, and again, for those of you who've been engaged in the chat, that's cool as well, of course. But if you do, if you really enjoyed something, let me know in the comments. It does, again, help spread the reach of the videos. And I will just say finally as well, I do have the Patreon. If you want to check that out, there's a bunch of things you get. One of the things is insight into my design journey as well. When I'm doing designs, and I've had quite a few over the last year, and there's hopefully more to come. I share my workings. I share kind of progress content, and I often get feedback as well from my patrons. So there's a bunch of stuff there. Check that out if that's of interest. If you enjoy these videos, these streams, that may be of interest to you. But I think that'll do it, guys. Thank you again. Thank you for your time this wonderful Thursday. I'll see you. I should be back around on Tuesday. Let me just check my calendar. Live on air. I won't show you the calendar, but I will check it. I believe we're on for Tuesday, but any last minute changes. So hope you see you for the eBay stream on Tuesday, and there will be the unboxing video, which will be going live, if not tomorrow, first thing this week. So enjoy that content. I'll see you guys soon for another one. All the best. See you soon.